I've been clairvoyant from the moment I was born. So I've been awake and I never lost consciousness. So I'm one of those very odd people who remembers her birth, remembers coming in, remembers everything, and being 2 years old already trying to give advice to people about their life purpose. So by the time I was 14, I was already filled with clients. Like, people were coming to me. I had a full practice, and I started very early. It's sort of like my whole life is life of service. I was always seeing things in people's energy fields, being clairvoyant. So there are different types of clairvoyance, and mine is about being able to see timelines and possibilities and options within one soul contract, so their soul design. And that's what I would always comment on, as far as like, oh, this way, if you go this way, this would happen. If you go this way, that will happen. It's not quite like reading the future. I don't have the gift of prophecy, but I do have the gift of seeing clearly what somebody is in the process of, which karmic pattern they're learning or avoiding learning. So that's what I started commenting on, like, in my world. And before long, there were a lot of people who wanted this. So it ended up becoming a combination of seeing things, advising, mentoring, and pure energy healing itself. Like if somebody had an energy block or something like that. So that's how I started. And then over the years, of course, it evolved into many things. I mean, I've done pure energy work. I've done kind of a channeling component when I would bring different energies through for people. At some point, I had a tour company when we would travel around the world and bring people everywhere in different sacred sites and do rituals, and teaching in different countries everywhere on this planet, practically. And after a while, it kind of settled into more of a specific methodology that is my own, which is called Transcension, which is where I teach people how to advance, but in a practical sense within their spiritual practice, so that it's not ungrounded, kind of going out there somewhere to meet higher frequencies, but it's about bringing those frequencies down into the body and actually transforming. So it's sort of like an internal process of embodying their own soul journey and living in alignment with their soul design. Energetics in general, it's about how you and something else relates. That something else could be some parts of you. It could be the universe in general. It could be energy guides and non-physical beings, or it could be other human beings. But it also could be things like jobs, like money, like something that you want in a material life. Like, let's say you want to attract a house into your life because you know you need to move, or something of this sort. So wealth energetics, so adding that wealth component, I kind of expand wealth from just money to abundance in general. And abundance is everything. It's your health, it's your well-being, it's your divine connection with something that is way bigger than you, so you feel like you belong. It's also, of course, the material plane components, like actual money or whatever you make your income through. So in wealth energetics, we are relating to the world through self-worth that is uplifted. So this is actually part of my Transcension method. And when you are able to own your worth and claim your power, you naturally expand your wealth container. Your wealth container, it's a component that we can sort of imagine in our energy field. It's not literally a container, it's a term, but it's like your capacity to receive. So when somebody's wealth container is like a teeny little Chinese teacup, they can do all the intentions in the world, meditations and whatever they want to attract and receive, but nothing would come in. Or even if it does come in, it cannot fit in. And this is the part that I see a lot with spiritual community, is that people do diligently all their meditations and intentions and affirmations and, vision boards and whatever, because they desiring to create that next level of their life, and then wonder, why is it not working? It's not because those techniques are somehow wrong. Techniques are fine, and each person kind of has their own path. But it's because unless the wealth container is expanded to the size of your vision, like whatever you want to attract has to be able to fit in. If that's not the case, then energetically we become more of a repellent instead of an attractor. And part of the wealth energetics, it's learning how to create a vortex that you become essentially a vortex that pulls into your life things that you desire, people that you desire, opportunities, spiritual connections. Some of them look exactly like what our ego personality wants, some don't. So sometimes it's kind of like, oh, that's a surprise. I didn't think it would look like that. But nevertheless, it's still a support for your next step. And all of that is still linked to like your vortex can only be as big as your wealth container. Yeah, a lot of it is actually not so much about how to create a larger container. It's more about how to clean up things that are in the way of them having the container that they kind of designed to have. Because in my view and everything I've seen over 20 years of doing this work is that we all are born with pretty large access to the universe. So we have ability, if we are fully aligned and living our soul design and in, perfect sort of internal balance, which doesn't mean that we are perfect, but the balance is, that means that we naturally can receive what is needed. So if we cannot, it's because through the karmic patterns, through the overlays, through conditioning, through programming, our container shrinks. A lot of times it happens from very early age because of the way that our education system is, when everything is very regimented, where individuality is not supported. So because of that, a lot of times I see children that maybe were originally kind of open and bright and able to connect to other realities kind of start to suppress that because they want to fit in, because that's making them too weird or too unusual or too something. It gets to be not a thing that supports them in their social life. So then it gets turned off, and especially if parents are kind of against the idea of child being unusual. So with that, we also kind of kill our wealth container as well. And then by the time the kid is graduating school and going to college, it's the same kind of regimented thing. Now it's focused on getting grades and whatever. And all of those things are projections of authority. So instead of being self-regulated, like navigated by their own inner voice, they now navigated by external parameters that they took on, that they believe are the correct parameters because their family thinks so, or their lifestyle supports that, and so on. Maybe the teachers told them that. Maybe just a karmic pattern. Sometimes people just have that as an imprint that they are choosing to be navigated by instead of the soul voice. And when that happens, they again limit their container to receive wealth. So then by the time, let's say, that person goes through whatever education they chose to have and now tries to have a job and everything, extrapolate like to 30 years, 40 years old, and they wondering, why am I struggling? I seem to be doing everything correctly and I'm a good person and I'm still struggling. Well, all that struggle is based on unfulfilled desire, which actually goes down into dissatisfaction, but not from the ego, but from the soul. There is a part of the person that's feeling discrepancy of them being in friction with themselves, which is what shrunk the wealth container. So the work that we would do would be about expanding that wealth container by shedding the layers of conditioning and imprinting, but by recognizing what is the karmic pattern that seems to be repeating itself here, and what is the lesson you are actually being taught, so that that person can finally learn the lesson. Because once the lesson is learned, it moves on. But like, that's it. The pattern stops. It only goes in a cycle after cycle because it's not learned. And this is also, I think, the component that humankind kind of lost, is that our lesson perception became overly linear because of our education system and because of just how everything here is so mechanical and step by step and whatever. So when somebody has a specific difficulty in their lifetime, quite often they're trying to solve it from the same level, like the level of the problem, which is the mental problem to begin with. So it's not solvable from that spot. You actually have to move outside. So the way I teach it is like, if your perception is a box, and box has parameters, like this is where you live. And we all have some boxes. I mean, nobody's fully ascended master with no box. So let's say you have some box. But like my box is huge. It involves like this planet, the universe, and many other things. But majority of human beings, boxes are teeny little boxes. And when we have a lesson, the lesson is something that is outside of the box, just on the top of it, not too far. But that means you have to actually have a part of you that goes outside of your own perceptual box in order to perceive the lesson. And this is where it sounds so non-linear, what I just said, for people, because like mentally, like I can't get that. And it's true, mentally you cannot. So this is where we go into other perception, like through sensing, through feeling, sometimes testing, smelling energy, sometimes just allowing your body to respond to life, but starting to notice. And with my ability, I usually can tell what is the actual lesson. So then a person can see, oh, learning it means this. Like maybe something is difficult and they told learning it must be persevering and pushing harder and make it happen. And I shouldn't give up and I want to give up and I'm so tired, but no, I shouldn't because I'm learning this lesson and nothing's happening. And then let's say that person comes to me and we're like, actually the lesson is in listening to your emotional waves, which means what you're doing is completely, you shouldn't be doing that at all. And then they're like, oh, but what, wouldn't it be giving up? It's like, no, that will only be within the box. Within the box, it would look like giving up. But if you're outside of the box, is it true for you? So then we get them to the place where they can sense that, you're right. I actually don't even feel aligned with the thing I was pushing so hard on. Okay, so now let's just as an experiment, have a week where you're not doing it. What happens? And suddenly all these magnificent things start to happen because their field relaxes and wealth container naturally grows because they're starting to learn the lesson. They stopped pushing. And then the very thing quite often that they were pushing so hard to get just arrives in their life without them doing anything. I think a lot of times the linear perspective as dominant has been suppressing so much of non-linear. And in the way that I work, it's a balance between the two. I don't believe we should get rid of linear because then we cannot function in this life and we still need to be able to pay the bills and have a house and, take care of the kids and whatever, life is still here. So a linear component is necessary. And the other side, though, the nonlinear, that's the quantum world. That's the 100% possible, 100% of the time, everything exists and you literally can have access to it, but it's non-linear. So just to describe a little bit more what I mean, linear perspective is when you have step-by-step process. So strategy, setting a goal and then trying to go towards the goal, having a commitment to a specific task and then habitually doing that task, like all the things that you generally see, like what are the good habits of successful people or spiritual people, and what all of that is actually linear. And some of it is needed to some degree. I don't think it should be rigid, but some strategy and basic step-by-step processes are necessary. Then there's another side, the nonlinear. Nonlinear would look like not like 1, 2, 3, 4 process. It would look like 1, 22, 4, 15, 88, 100. So it doesn't make any sense to the linear mind because these dots do not seem to be in order. And yet there's still some steps. I mean, it's very rarely when it's 1 and 100. There's still some stepping stones, but these stepping stones are intuited by alignment of ourselves to our own sovereignty and internal authority of our soul design. And then from that place, we know which sort of is the right stepping stone. So it becomes kind of like a shortcut. So you just get to the right stone in the right time that then creates an energetical pattern that gets you to whatever the desired result was without you having to go there over a very long period of time by stepping on every stepping stone. So it's a different way. It has its own issues, I guess, in the material world because people who have stronger nonlinear side have difficulty explaining things and articulating clearly what they're trying to say because speech is linear. So you can see that I'm actually a very linear person with huge access to nonlinear as well, which what makes me unique because I have access to both sides. So that's one of my superpowers, that I unite this multidimensional nonlinear world with being able to connect to guides and universe and energy patterns and timelines and possibilities and all of that into very practical material world as to like, great, all that stuff. Now let's make it work here for you so that your life is actually wealthy in every way, in your health way, in your well-being way, in your money way, in your relationship way, all of it.